She laughed the loudest when I lost everything. Not quietly, not nervously. She laughed like she'd been waiting for the fall, like she enjoyed watching me crash. That night, in front of nearly 200 people, my company collapsed. The investors backed out, the funding disappeared, and the launch party turned into a funeral for my future. I stood frozen near the stage, still holding a champagne glass. Across the room, Emily leaned into Michael's ear, said something, and then burst out laughing. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. I met her eyes for 1 second. She didn't look away. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask her how she could do that after 3 years together, after promising she believed in my dream. I just walked out. The night air was freezing, but I felt nothing. My phone vibrated over and over with messages from staff, clients, friends. I didn't check a single one. The next morning, I disappeared, sold my apartment, deleted my socials, and left the city. They thought I ran away from shame. What they didn't know was, I ran towards something better. I started over from zero. No credit, no name. I took jobs no one wanted, drove delivery trucks, packed boxes in the back of a warehouse, cleaned up after meetings I used to lead, and I saved every cent, every deal, every favor. I turned silence into fuel. I let the memory of her laugh sharpen me. 2 years later, I walked into a sleek glass tower under my own name, James Carter, founder and CEO of Arcus Holdings. I didn't need to announce myself. People stood when I entered rooms now. People listened. People who once dismissed me now booked appointments. Months in advance just to shake my hand, and last month I signed one of the cleanest real estate deals of my career, a block of luxury apartments previously owned by a mismanaged fund. Great location. Undervalued rent. The top floor, Unit 7C. Emily's name was on the lease. I smiled when I saw it, not because I wanted revenge, but because, for the first time, in years, I was going to knock on her door. Emily used to say I was the calmest man she'd ever met. Not because I didn't feel. She claimed it was because I felt too much, but refused to show it. She called me her anchor, her constant. In the early days, she used to trace her fingers along my jawline and whisper that my silence made her feel safe. That was before. Before I learned that being calm didn't mean being respected. Before I learned that being constant didn't mean I wouldn't be replaced. My name is James Carter. I wasn't born into wealth. Everything I ever owned was earned, not gifted. I grew up watching my mother work night shifts just to keep the lights on. My father left before I learned how to spell his name. That kind of upbringing teaches you 2 things: how to keep moving and how to stop needing applause for it. I met Emily when I was 26. She was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying, red lips, sharp eyes, and the kind of laugh that echoed longer than it should have. She walked like she owned every room she entered. I didn't expect her to notice me, but she did. And when she smiled in my direction the first time, something in me shifted. She worked in PR. I was building my first startup from a shared office space with a team of 3 and a bank balance that made us flinch every time rent came around. She said she admired my drive, that I had a quiet fire. I believed her. Back then, Emily was the kind of woman who could convince you the world was yours if she held your hand. And I gave her everything: time, trust, devotion. I spent nights coding till my fingers went numb, then drove to her apartment just to see her fall asleep. She said she didn't care about money or status, that she believed in my vision, that all she needed was me. Maybe that was true at the start, or maybe it was just convenient to say until someone with a shinier future walked in. I noticed the shift slowly. It started with little things. She stopped asking how my meetings went. She started wearing heels even on Sundays, just in case she bumped into a client. Her phone, once left unlocked and forgotten on the table, was always face down, buzzing silently. Then came Michael. A man with a last name that made people smile, the kind who ordered rare wine at casual lunches and never checked the price. He ran a luxury events agency and worked closely with Emily's firm. He liked to joke, touch shoulders when he laughed. Always carried 2 tickets to something spontaneous. He called me the tech guy. Said it like it was cute. Emily laughed too hard at his jokes. She said they were just colleagues, that he was fun but not serious. I didn't fight it. I didn't question her. I just worked harder, thinking maybe if the next round of funding came through, maybe if the launch succeeded, she'd remember why she chose me. But that launch never happened, and when it fell apart, so did everything else. She didn't even flinch. The night I lost the company, she didn't follow me out. She didn't call. She didn't come home until dawn, and when she did, her eyes were bloodshot and her heels were scuffed. She stood by the doorway like I was the guest, not her partner. I asked her if she'd been with him. She didn't answer. She didn't have. 2 days later, she moved out without warning. Left a key on the kitchen counter next to a note that simply said, "I hope you find peace, James. You deserve it." Peace. I didn't even know what that meant anymore. For a long time, I thought Emily broke me, that loving her and losing her had carved something out of me I'd never get back. I lived in that space for months, staring at my ceiling, ignoring every call, letting the bitterness turn to silence. Until one day I got up and packed my things without a word. I disappeared because I had to. I rebuilt because I needed to. And now, 2 years later, I was standing outside the door of apartment 7C, the unit she once described as her perfect little skyline view. My building now. My roof above her head. My name on the deed. Not because I planned it, not because I sought her out, but because fate is funnier than fiction. I knocked. Lightly. No bitterness in my chest, just a strange curiosity. The door opened slowly, and there she was. Emily. Her hair wasn't as perfect as it used to be. Her face, still beautiful, looked tired in a way makeup couldn't fix. She blinked twice before recognition hit her. "James?" I gave her a small nod. She stepped back as if trying to figure out if she was dreaming. "What are you doing here?" "I own the building," I said simply. "Just here for a walkthrough. Routine inspection." Her lips parted, and for the first time, she didn't have anything clever to say. I stepped inside without waiting for permission, walked past the familiar scent of rosewood and vanilla, same scent she used to wear when she'd lie next to me and ask about the future. I glanced at the photos on the side table, her and her friends, her and some industry awards, but none of me. She closed the door behind me cautiously. "You're really the landlord?" I turned to face her fully. "Surprised?" She nodded slowly, her voice small. "I thought you were gone." "I was," I said. "But some people are harder to erase than you think." Her expression flickered, guilt bleeding through the corners of her eyes. She crossed her arms, but didn't speak. I looked around once more, then added flatly, "Rent's going up. Market price." She swallowed. "Right. Of course." Silence fell. Thick. Heavy. She stepped forward slightly. "James, I raised a hand to stop. Her. "Let's not pretend you care. It's just business now." Emily stood in the middle of the apartment like a stranger in her own life. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, but paused, lowering her eyes instead. I could feel the weight of it. Whatever apology she was building, whatever explanation, she thought I needed. But the truth was, I didn't. I already knew everything. Still, she tried. "James, about that night, at the launch," my voice was flat. "You don't have to explain." "No, I do." Her tone sharpened, her arms uncrossing as her hands twitched nervously. "I laughed, I know, I shouldn't have, but I was drunk, and Michael said something stupid, and it had nothing to do with you, I swear. I didn't move. I didn't blink. But you didn't defend me either." She froze. I didn't think I had to. That sentence hit harder than she probably intended. I didn't think I had to. After everything I had done, staying up late to prepare her media kits, sitting through corporate events I didn't belong at, helping her rewrite bios and build her portfolio. I didn't think I had to. That's what I had been to her. Optional. I looked around her apartment again. It hadn't changed much. The throw pillows were still the same deep mauve. The shelf still held copies of fashion magazines she'd once proudly posed for, and in the corner stood the same bar cart I had assembled. The one she insisted made her space look expensive, but nothing in here had ever really belonged to me. I was just the one who held the furniture together. Emily moved toward me, cautious, like I was made of glass. I didn't leave because you failed, James. I left because I didn't know how to help you. You didn't have to help, I replied, my voice low. You just had to stay. She winced like the words cut through her. I panicked, all right? I didn't know if I could be with someone who was falling. I finally turned to face her fully, meeting her eyes. But you were fine being with me when I was rising. Her lips parted again, but no sound came out. I shook my head. It's funny. You said you loved how calm I was, that it made you feel safe. But maybe what you really loved was that I never made demands, that I never asked you to carry anything. Heavy, she swallowed, guilt spreading across her face like a slow burn. James, she whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Then she said something I didn't expect. After you left, I looked for you. I narrowed my eyes. I did. I asked around. I checked with your old friends, your old co-founders. No one knew where you went. It was like you vanished. I did, I said plainly, because you made it clear I didn't belong. She took a step closer. That's not true, but it was. The night after the collapse, I had come home to a quiet apartment and found her closet half empty. She didn't leave a note. She didn't check if I ate. She didn't care that I hadn't slept in 2 days. And a week later, I saw her at a rooftop party in Michael's arms. She didn't know I was there. I had come to collect something from a friend. She laughed at his joke, touched his chest, whispered in his ear. Just like she used to with me. That image had replayed in my head so many times I stopped dreaming. It wasn't the betrayal that cut deepest. It was the ease. How easily she moved on. How effortlessly I was replaced. I hadn't spoken about that moment to anyone, not even to Olivia. Olivia had come into my life during the year I buried myself, in rebuilding. A legal consultant who wasn't interested in small talk, compliments, or romantic distractions. We started as business partners, cold, focused, no pretense. But somewhere between the late-night contract reviews and cross-country meetings, we started laughing. Not the forced kind, the quiet kind that comes from trust. She never asked about my past. She just showed up and stayed. I never told Olivia about Emily because she never asked, because she never made me feel like I had to prove I'd healed. Emily was still standing in front of me waiting for something. Redemption, maybe. Closure, more likely. I see you now, she said softly. Who you've become, and I'm proud of you. I let that hang in the air. It wasn't pride she felt, it was regret. And regret comes when you realize what you used to have had value after you've thrown it away. Do you want something, Emily? I asked, voice even. Her expression faltered. No, I don't know. I nodded. Then I'll go. I have other tenants to see. As I turned to leave, she called out, voice cracking. Wait, just tell me one thing. I paused but didn't look back. Did you hate me? I stood still for a long moment. Then I answered. No, I hated who I became for you. And with that, I closed the door behind me. The hallway felt colder than before. Each step away from Emily's door echoed like it meant something. Like I was putting distance between two versions of myself. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I might forget everything it took to become the man I am now. And forgetting wasn't an option, but my chest was tight. I told myself it was nothing, just old wounds pulling at the scar. That seeing her again had stirred up dust I hadn't cleaned out yet. But it wasn't just dust. It was buried weight, years of silence pressing down all at once. My fingers twitched as I slid them into my coat pocket. I didn't want to feel anything, but I did. Anger, bitterness, and something far worse. I still cared, not in the way I used to. Not in the reckless, all-consuming way that made me ignore every red flag just to keep her beside me, but in the quiet, unwanted way you care when someone you once loved shatters in front of you, when you remember the way they used to smile, when their voice still fits into spaces in your head you thought were long emptied out. That part made me hate myself more than anything. I shouldn't care. Not after what she did, not after how easily she let me go. But some part of me, some trait I've never been proud of, still felt the need to protect people even after they stopped deserving it. As I drove away from the building, my thoughts spiraled. I should have been proud. I stood in front of the woman who once laughed at my failure and walked out untouched. I gave her no promises, no weakness, no hint that she still held a sliver of my history. I should have felt victorious. But why did it feel hollow? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the leather creaking under my fingers. The city lights blurred outside the windshield, glowing like memories I didn't want. Everything reminded me of her. The sushi place on 14th where she said I was too polite to be ambitious. The bookstore she dragged me to, claiming I needed aesthetic edges. The stupid corner cafe she once called our third place. Gone. All of it. Or at least, it should have been. I parked in front of the office and didn't get out right away. I leaned my head back against the seat, eyes closed, breathing shallow. The silence screamed louder than traffic. My mind flicked to Olivia. Her voice steadied me. She never made noise unless it mattered. Never demanded parts of me I wasn't ready to give. She waited. She listened. She cared without conditions. I opened my eyes and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. Not from work, but from remembering. That was the problem. You think once someone's out of your life, the pain will fade. That time buries it. But all it takes is a single moment. A knock, a name, a laugh you used to know, and suddenly you're in that room again, standing in your own collapse. I let out a slow breath. What was I even mourning? The person she used to be? The person I used to be with her? I shook my head. No. It wasn't about Emily. It was about who I was when I loved her. That version of me, desperate to be enough, willing to bend until I broke, was dead. And what stood in his place was someone who learned how to walk alone. But that didn't mean I didn't feel. That didn't mean I didn't still ache in places no one could see. I stepped out of the car and walked into the building, nodding to the guard who gave me a slight bow. My name meant something now. My presence held weight. That should have been enough. Inside my office, the city stretched beyond the floor to ceiling. Windows. Sharp, endless, indifferent. I stared at it for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. Olivia. You left early. Everything okay? I stared at her message longer than I needed to. Me. Saw a ghost. But I'm still breathing, she replied instantly. Olivia. Want me to haunt it with you? I almost smiled. Almost. She didn't ask questions. Didn't dig. Just left the line open in case I needed it. I leaned against the glass, the weight in my chest shifting, dulling. Emily had reopened something, but that didn't mean I had to fall into it. I had climbed too far, and I wasn't falling again. The sky outside was overcast, the kind that made the city look like it was holding its breath. I sat alone in my office with the lights off, the glow of the skyline washing over the glass like a memory I didn't ask for. Olivia hadn't answered any of my messages. I didn't blame her. I hadn't said what needed to be said. And now it might be too late. I replayed that dinner in my mind more than I should have. Her voice, her restraint. That last sentence. I'm not angry you ran into her. I'm angry that when she reached for you, a part of you didn't move away. Because she was right. I hadn't moved away. Not physically. Not emotionally. Even when I told Emily I didn't love her anymore, there was still something in me that hadn't closed the door completely. A thread. A loose end. Something I had never burned. And somehow, Emily knew that. She always had a way of finding cracks and slipping through them. So when I walked into the building later that evening and saw her waiting near the lobby, dressed in that same off-white coat she wore the night we first kissed, I wasn't surprised. But I wasn't calm either. I stood still, expression unreadable. Emily took a step forward, hands tucked into her sleeves. I didn't know if you'd come. I didn't say I would. I left something upstairs, she said. Mind walking me up? I looked at the security guard, who glanced away quickly, pretending he didn't hear anything. I was too tired to argue. So I nodded once and we stepped into the elevator. The silence between us was thick, 2 years' worth of unspoken things pressing against the walls. The elevator dinged. We walked side by side down the hallway like ghosts retracing old steps. Inside her apartment, the lights were warm. Familiar. Too familiar. You ever notice, she said, her voice soft, how everything feels smaller after someone leaves? I didn't answer. She walked toward the kitchen and poured herself a glass of wine, like it was any normal evening. Like we were still something. You know, she said, swirling the glass, I used to imagine you'd come. Back, not as the landlord, just come back, say you couldn't stay away. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. What did you leave behind, Emily? She looked at me and gave a small laugh. Closure. I stayed silent. She walked to the window, the city behind her like a blurred painting. I've done everything wrong. I know that. I threw you away like you were nothing, and I don't even have an excuse. You don't need one, I said flatly. What's done is done. But it's not done, she said, turning sharply. That's the problem. I still see you in every room. I wake up and check the door, hoping you might walk in. I listen for your voice. I replay the way you looked at me that night you failed. How calm you were, even while everything was falling apart. I wasn't calm, I said. I was dying inside. Her voice cracked. I know. She took a slow breath and moved closer. I never deserved you. But I'm not asking for forgiveness, James. I'm asking you to let me try. Let me do one thing, right? She reached out, her fingers barely grazing mine. I miss you. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. But I didn't move forward either. She leaned in slightly, her eyes searching mine. Please. And then I said the one thing I should have said 2 years ago. No. Her expression shattered. I loved you, I continued, my voice quiet. I would have given you everything, and you knew that. But when I needed you the most, you didn't just walk away, you laughed. Tears gathered in her eyes. You say you miss me? I said. But what you miss is the way I loved you, the way I put you above myself, the way I made you feel like the center of the world. I never knew how to love, she whispered. Not the way you did. That's not true, I said. You just chose not to love me. She shook her head. I was afraid. Of what? Of needing someone, she said, voice trembling. Of depending on someone who might fail. Of loving someone who wasn't perfect. I was never perfect, I replied. I was just real. Emily took a shaky step back, her hands covering her face. I ruined it, didn't I? Yes, I said. And now you're trying to put it back together because you're finally alone. She didn't deny it. And what about Olivia? I asked. She looked up. She's not just a chapter in my new life. She's the reason I don't look back. But you dragged her into this. You stood in front of her and tested her like she was some obstacle to reclaiming something you lost. I wasn't trying to hurt her. But you did, I said sharply. You wanted to see if I'd come running back. Silence. I didn't, I said. I came here to end this. Emily nodded slowly. So that's it? Yes. She stared at the floor, the reality finally sinking in. Then she walked to the door and opened it. Then go. I stepped past her without looking back, but as I reached the hallway, I stopped. Emily, she looked up. I hope you find peace someday. But I'm not it. The door shut behind me with finality, and this time, it stayed shut. I didn't speak to anyone for the next 2 days. I didn't answer calls. I didn't open my laptop. I didn't return to the building. I just thought about everything. About who I was when I met Emily. Who I became to please her. How I let her laughter burn deeper than any betrayal should. And how even after walking away from her apartment that night, I still carried something heavy. Something final that needed to be laid to rest. It wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about dignity and justice. I walked into my office early the next morning. My assistant stood as I entered, handing me a sealed envelope. This came from the legal team, sir. It's the final clearance on the eviction orders. I took it silently. The building that Emily lived in? It was mine now, fully. Not just in name. I'd been quietly buying out the minority shareholders over the past year. A slow acquisition. Intentional. No one had paid attention to Unit 7C. They thought it was sentimental clutter. They didn't know it was the origin of everything. Held the envelope for a moment, then set it down and sent one message to the building manager. Me. Serve the papers today. Don't delay. And raise the rent across all premium units. New market rate. Emily had always said she loved that apartment because it made her feel above the world. Let her feel gravity now. That evening, I returned home to Olivia. I didn't expect her to be waiting by the door, but she was. She didn't speak. Just crossed her arms, eyes unreadable. I'm sorry, I said before she could ask. For? For not telling you everything. For letting ghosts speak louder than I did. She walked over and stopped in front of me. Do you love me, James? Yes. Then, show me! I nodded, reached into my coat and pulled out a small folder. Inside were the details of the building, of the final buyout, of Emily's eviction order. She tried to interfere, I said. So I reminded her who I am now. Olivia flipped through the documents in silence. When she looked up, her eyes were steel. And I made sure she won't forget it. Olivia closed the folder. I don't need revenge on your past. I know, I said. But I did. She stepped forward, resting her forehead against my chest. I don't care who she was. I care who you are now. So if we're doing this, James, really doing this, then let her be done. I wrapped my arms around her. She is. 3 weeks passed. Emily didn't reach out. Not until I received a handwritten letter forwarded from the building office. It was short. Barely 3 sentences. You win. I underestimated you. I won't forget this. There was no apology, no bitterness, just acknowledgement. And that was all I needed. Because by then, Olivia and I were flying out to Singapore. I had signed a deal that would triple our company's value. And beside me sat the woman who never needed me to fall to prove I could rise. She never asked me to kneel on glass. She simply walked beside me. Months passed. The world moved forward. I got busier. We bought a new place, one without ghosts. One where every piece of furniture was chosen by both of us. No rosewood, no meaningless aesthetics, just intention and peace. Then, one night, as we sat on the balcony watching the sun disappear behind glass towers, Olivia spoke softly. She still thinks you did it for revenge. I did. She looked at me, but not the kind she imagines, I continued. Not spite, just clarity. She needed to know I wasn't hers anymore, that I'd never be again, that her control died the moment she laughed. Olivia nodded. And now? Now, I turned to her, lifting her hand to my lips. Now I'm free. The next morning, I checked the company dashboard. Our Asia division had officially outpaced North America in growth. The IPO was scheduled in 6 months, and on my desk sat a small, quiet note from my legal team. Final asset transition complete. Emily Liu's lease officially terminated. Her security deposit forfeited due to breach. Attached was a photo, Emily exiting the building with 2 suitcases, her eyes down, lips pressed tight. She had nowhere else to go in the city, not because she couldn't afford it, but because every building she'd once been admired in, every rooftop party, every private elevator, was now under my name, or someone I controlled. Her world had shrunk, and mine had expanded, not out of vengeance, but out of vision. I turned off the screen. I didn't need to look anymore, because for the first time in years, the past had no weight on me. That night, as snow began to fall in soft sheets across the city skyline, I stood beside Olivia in our living room, holding 2 glasses of wine. She looked over at me and smiled. "To freedom?" she asked. I clinked, her glass gently. To never kneeling again. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, I had everything I ever wanted. Not because I fought for love, but because I stopped fighting for the wrong one.